L'chaim v'livracha, to life and to blessings. Today is the Yortzeit, the day of passing of the Rambam of Maimonides. What does it say about Maimonides? On his tombstone, it says, from Moses to Moses, there were none like Moses. So we just got finished learning from Moshe Rabbeinu. Soon we're going to learn from Moshe ben Maimonides. What is the common denominator between them? It's truth, the bearer of truth. So what is truth? What is truth? I don't know if we know what truth is, but one thing we do know, what's the opposite of truth? What's a lie? What's not? What is truth? So who truth is Moses' truth. As we learned this week in Torah studies, in the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses was born, it says the house was full of light because the truth of his soul was apparent in his birth. His divine soul was by the rest of us concealed and hidden. The only thing that is clear when you're born is that you're very needy and you need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to be burped, you need whatever you need, right? You're very needy. And what was revealed in his birth is the holiness of his being. That was unique. Why is that necessary? Because he's truth. And truth, as the word emes is, aleph mem taf, which translates to truth in Hebrew. Aleph, first letter of the alphabet, mem is the middle letter, and taf is the last letter. Truth is something from beginning, middle to end that stays the truth, right? For things that have the ups and the downs, the valleys, the peaks, the mountaintops, which is life, which is normal, but that's not called living the truth, right? That's not called living the truth. Because that means there's change. And real truth is immutable, doesn't change. Okay, welcome to Tanya. Today, I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you Chabad Zich in Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to change, to change, to learn with you the Tanya, something that doesn't change. And we learn Tanya every day. So we conclude today chapter 13. Chapter 13, we learned 3 different levels of the Beinoni. And the last level is about a Beinoni who, in their prayer, is very unique. Because the prayer is full of passion, full of love of God, full of connectivity, that at that moment in prayer, there is no struggle. I struggle in prayer, in concentration and focus, to have it heartfelt, because I'm a BIT at best, a Beinoni in training. But the Beinoni in their prayers, they come to a place that the divine soul is, completely um, completely revealed, so much so the animal's soul is is sort of, not there. Clipped, yeah. Yet, compared to the righteous who serve God in perfect truth, right, in the truest manner possible, this love is not called, it's not called avodas emes. It's not called true service. Why? Because that love will disappear after their prayers. To have food in front of them, not that they'll love food, but the love of God now is, in prayer, they're totally focused. There's no world in front of them. There's no mundane world that they have to deal with. They pray under their tallis, and they focus that there's nothing before them but connection to God through prayer. But afterwards, you go out in the world, whether to business or even into, mundane activity. There's a world out there. So no longer is that love that they had in prayer in the same manner. It disappears. So that's not truth. By definition, that's not truth. Truth shall be established forever. But a tongue of falsehood is only momentarily, as King Solomon says in Mishlei, Proverbs. So truth is something that's immutable, right? And since the love that the Beinoni is experiencing is only during their prayer and disappears afterwards, so it's not the truest sense of truth, right? Only the perfect, the real righteous people can you say that their service is truth, because it doesn't change. The love of God they have every single moment. Doesn't matter if they have a plate of food that looks delicious and that's appetizing, enticing. They're not enticed an iota, right? Because they've transformed their inner world. They have no desire in their heart for the pleasure of food or the pleasure of anything except for connection to God. That's all, right? That clear. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says now that the rank of the Beinoni and this level of love is regarded as avodah tama. It's not a perfectly perfect truth, but it is a complete service of God. And it is truth, their truth, on the level that they're on. So what the Alter Rebbe is going to describe now is probably something we're somewhat familiar with. Till now, we describe truth as being absolute, right? If it's mutable, it's not truth, right? That's why God is the ultimate only truth, because God doesn't change before he created the world, and he's not changed because he created the world, right? I'm changed. Before I had the coffee, and now after having the coffee, I'm more alert. I changed, right? That's mutable. God doesn't, right? So here's the ultimate truth. So when you're aligned with God in such a way, in an immutable way, then you're also the truth, right? That's the righteous. Fine. Their love, they have the love of God, the same in their prayers as they do with their food. Hard to fathom, and that's why we're so distant what it means righteous. And that's not even a Rebbe, by the way. A Rebbe is even infinitely beyond that. Because that's righteous is just they're righteous for themselves. A Rebbe is connected with every single soul. So a whole different story. Again, way beyond what we are, what we can experience, fathom. So again, but now the Alter Rebbe is introducing that there is truth that's relative, right? In other words, to the where you're in your level of the Beinoni, right? Depending on what level, because as we learn three levels that we learned, there's many more, but three basic levels that we learn, right? That relative to their level, there is truth. So what does that mean? Since they could every day come to a love of God in their prayer, so that means it's not constant, immutable, that the love, but the love in prayer is immutable, and therefore there's a truth to it. So there's a truth to it, right? It is constant. It's not constant 24/7. It's constant every day, right? Day in, day out. So how do we understand that? So there's truth in absolute terms, and there's truth on the level where the person is. Are you true to the core of that level? Are you aligned with the core of the level that you're at? That's called truth in this manner. Okay. And this is what's called the truth of the attribute of Yaakov. That says you've given Yaakov the attribute of truth, God, right? And this is the idea in the sanctuary of God, which is the home of God, right? Which is the revelation of God, which is the truth of God being revealed, is in the Mishkan. There was a middle bolt that went on and went through all of the planks and bent through all of the planks and was the middle of the core of the plank. That's truth. That's metaphorically the idea of truth, right? It secured all of the planks together, that they held together, right? Because of this middle bolt that went through them. It was bored into the plank. There was on top and on the bottom, there was also, but that was on the surface. This was in the core of the plank itself. So this is the idea, the concept of truth, right? That it goes through the core, the middle of every plank, every level of divine service. Is that clear? So that means each level, each plank, each level of divine service has its core level of what the truth of that level is. And therefore, to be connected to that truth. So by the Beinoni, the truth of the love of God that he has in prayer on that plank, in that time period, right? The Beinoni achieves the truth, the core of that level. In absolute terms, compared to absolute truth, it's not. But in this manner of how we understand truth, it does.
You say temporary perfection.
No, because that's not truth. It's not, it is constant. It's not constant 24/7, but it's constant day in, day out that the Beinoni achieves this, right? So it's the truth of that level of divine service that the Beinoni finds themselves in, that they're aligned to that inner truth. So that's the way I would explain it.
Has this anything to do with clearly video that at the level they can only experience a certain level?
Huh?
Has it to do with the plea of the individual seeing that at that level they can only appreciate and experience a certain amount of truth?
Amount?
Level of truth. I mean, I might be using the wrong terms, but it's just that truth exists, but where they are at the moment, they cannot experience and appreciate all of this amount of truth. But where they are in terms of their growth and development, this is the amount that they can handle or manage.
I don't think it's about an experience here. I think it's about a being, where you're at.
Well,
So I don't think that,
a child could only experience a certain or handle a certain level of truth.
right,
An adult, as he or she develops.
right, exactly.
Is it so that's why?
So that means at different levels, there's a different core of truth of that level. Good morning, good morning. Right? There's a different level. Welcome, welcome. Every level has the truth in its core of that level. So, what does that mean? So for the Beinoni, it means, the daily capability of coming to a love of God in his prayers is the core truth of, the prayers on a daily basis. Right? That's coming to, that would be the example that, that we're using, that we're understanding over here. So what does that mean for me and you? It means whatever level we're at, to try to be, and I don't know how that would, I have to think in it and more into this and see what more is expressed on this, is to be aware of what's the core truth of this moment in time, this thing I'm engaged in, right? Is it absolute truth? No, because you're not righteous. You're not perfectly aligned, right? And therefore, this is the truth in this moment, but maybe in another moment, there would be a different way you would express it and wouldn't be the same. For a tzaddik, the love and awe of God is absolute. There isn't a moment that they're not living it. Not about experiencing it, living it. Not about feeling it, living it. They're living it, right? If they're not, that means they're not a tzaddik. They're not a tzaddik, right? Now, again, we can't fathom this. Every single moment, the love and awe of God. Like, we're talking about, people that it's a different, we don't have that kind of soul. We're going to learn the next chapter about that. We don't have that kind of soul that we could be that. Forget about experience. It's not about experience. It's about being. Experience is, feeling it. It's about, self-awareness. It's not about self-awareness. This is about being. The righteous isn't thinking to themselves, wow, that was such a good davening. They're not righteous if they ever thought that. They're not righteous. That's a self-awareness. You're aware that, whoa, that was really full of love. Barely a Beinoni. I don't even think it would be a Beinoni with that. For sure not righteous. I mean, maybe a Beinoni. Yeah, Beinoni would have that. Yeah, because Beinoni has still urges of the heart, so the thought would come, but he would right, totally push that away with two hands. Self-aware of like how good I am. By Hasidim, that's called a Issa Daraisa. It's called a biblical prohibition. It's not a prohibition in the Torah, but it's like so. It's experience, self-awareness. Be. Talking about a different world, right? It's a different world with Hasidus. Even though we're not that, but just the notion of that when you're self-aware of how, that was a good one. A Hasid, that is like you want to throw up for your of yourself. That's a Hasid. And so the Beinoni would throw up. We would like, okay, get over yourself. Right? Different world we're talking about. Different. Forget about those people who BIT means, right? The whole world is about self-awareness, self-fulfillment, right? Being aware of how, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be aware of your qualities. Of course, you have to be aware of them, and your struggles and where, that. It's just, to any kind of gloating in like a minute sense of it, right?
There's a healthy self-awareness, unhealthy self-awareness. With the self-awareness to, like we were saying, judge ourselves, what's animating us, but also we can be self-aware and like the wrong way, like we're wanting maybe ego or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Heavy duty, folks. If you're with us on this and you're introduce us into your life, any of these notions, you can't live the same life after learning Tanya. How is it to be judged and measured for the constant love and awe of God? We're not going to be there, Vicky. We ain't going to have it. We're not righteous. We're far, far from being righteous. So we're not going to have it constant. That's not where we should be looking at. Should be looking at just and be more aligned, doing what Hashem wants, and more God aware of in our lives. And how's that judged? I'm distant from that. How do I know how it's to be judged? Actually I gave the example, right? The righteous would never do something and have a feeling of, look what I accomplished. In other words, there's a me and what I accomplished. And the accomplishment is there for me to feel good about me. That's animal soul talk. That's not divine soul talk. Divine soul talk is like, that's what I was created for. So like, there's nothing to like, to get excited about myself that I did something, right? I mean, that's what I'm here for. So what am I getting, so excited about myself? That's what I was created for. So I'm just doing what God needs, right? The awareness of God's presence comes from the powerful moment that is different than gloating. Yeah. And by the way, the gloating over here, I'm not talking even gloating to anybody else. Forget it. That's completely, that's not a chassid at all. But self-gloating we're talking about. We're not talking about to anybody. That's like not even to talk about, right? But but to yourself, we're talking about, right? That's like a ooh. Is truth existence from existence or existence from absence? I'm not certain what you mean by that, Patty. I don't know what that means. Truth from existence or existence from absence? Truth is that which is eternally mutable. It's not going to change. So it's true. The God is the truth. Yes, absolutely correct. Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. Is there a category between the Russia and the Beinoni? Well, there's two levels of Russia, we learned, right? Russia that is full of regret, which is most of us. And then the Russia who isn't, doesn't have regret and remorse for what they do. All right, amazing. So what this really means is when you're really aligned, so then what you're sensing is what you're aligned with and not you. Right? By the way, give you a perfect example. When you're healthy, what's the opposite of healthy? You feel your head, you have a headache. You feel your back, you have a backache. God forbid you should feel your spleen. Oh, yeah, that'd be bad news, right? Right. So spiritually, if I feel myself not healthy, I'm not healthy, right? And if I'm aligned with my source and I feel the presence of God, oh, then I'm healthy. All right. Amazing stuff. Amazing that the Alter Rebbe gifted us with these teachings that we can have on a daily basis. That there's not a single day that he is teaching something that's not completely novel, that's not completely counterintuitive, completely beyond what we well, I accept that, if you've learned it before, so you're aware of it. But if you appreciate how unique and novel the teachings are, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. All right, folks. Thank you. Rambam coming up. Rambam's birthday. Let's celebrate learning Rambam. No, I'm not her birthday. It's his your time. What did I say? His birthday. You have a cake? Pesach, where's your cake?